Hi, and welcome to this week's episode of The Guest List. I'm your host, Steve Guest. For those of you that haven't listened to this podcast previously, this podcast was born out of my first book, Top Bill of the Life of a Recruiter, and a growing number of people within my network that came to me with various questions and scenarios, and it gave me the platform to really kind of go out there, go out to the market and find some far more intelligent people than me, far more interesting people than me, and have a chat with them. Henceforth, the podcast was created. Today's guest, I'm really energized and looking forward to speaking to. We've followed each other on social media for a long while. It is a household name for those of you that are out there in the social media world. I'm going to head straight into the bio before I introduce them, as always. Today's guest has built several successful companies, mentored hundreds of entrepreneurs, and was a final candidate in the BBC One The Apprentice show. Having spoken on internationally known stages, including Wembley Stadium, the London Olympic Stadium, and the ExCeL Stadium, she knows how to captivate an audience with her story. From professional tennis player to Forbes featured entrepreneur, she's on a mission to create an impact. She has now launched 2 PR, an international creative and viral creative press agency, getting online coaches, entrepreneurs and CEOs featured in huge publications. Sabrina Stocker, welcome to the guest list.
Thank you. Lovely to be joining you today, Steve.
How are you?
I'm good. I'm energized. I'm in Florida right now and super excited for today's episode.
There's no need to show off. I think every time I talk to you, you're somewhere else.
I am. I can't stay put. It's a blessing and a curse, and I'm sure my mum misses me, but it's great being able to travel about.
What drives that though? What is the kind of push that it means you end up in a different part of the world?
I love challenging myself, and the biggest change that you can create is going to a completely new country where you don't know anybody and having to foster those relationships from scratch and actually learning the ideas and the culture of every different place and being able to embody that into my business, into my life has been really amazing.
Yeah. So you're in Florida now. How long have you been? Have you just arrived?
So just arrived in Florida, did 3.5 months in Mexico, 5 months in Dubai, 2 months in Egypt, and a couple in the UK.
I think when we last spoke, you were Egypt, weren't you? And you were going off to Dubai for Christmas time. Is that about right?
That's correct. Yeah.
My word. So living out of suitcases. And go on.
It's interesting that I sold everything and I thought, you know what, I'm going to do it. And the day before I sold my car, I didn't have accommodation anymore. I'd given up my rent and I just went for it.
That is crazy, scary crazy at the same time. You must have had days where you think, oh my God, what am I doing? Where's just that bit where you can just sit on the sofa, the end of the week, the normality side of things that most of us live?
I feel like just living in one country isn't normal. I love the travel. I'm always telling my friends to come and join me on my adventures.
Yeah, and I bet they always say, no, I've got work. No, I've got this. I can't do it next week. I've got this happening.
I think it's a mixture of the cultural bring up, but also the transition into the online space as well. And I'm really lucky. I don't have kids. I don't have anything in the UK that's holding me back. So it's given me the opportunity to be a bit more flexible while I can.
Yeah, good for you. I say, I think many people would swap if they had the opportunity. So welcome to the show. As we say, the guests and the people that I like chatting to on this podcast are inspiring, empowering, motivational people. You have kind of left everything in a trail of destruction behind you, haven't you? I mean, since you walked onto the Apprentice, what year was that? How many years ago was that?
Gosh, I think it's 2018, so 4 years ago.
4 years ago. And then, I mean, what's happened from there? Because I assume the Apprentice gave you a kind of, or elevated the platform that you were on to go off and do other things.
Yeah, I'd always wanted to go on The Apprentice. I always knew I was going to go on The Apprentice, and getting on was very strategic in terms of the interview and application process. The Apprentice gave me a groundwork to open up new doors and opportunities, and very fortunately I came across an intelligent and positive light from the producers and hopefully a bit for myself as well. And it opened up red carpet events. I was asked to advise for the government, and it gave me a platform, and therefore being able to educate and inspire and show that I knew what I was talking about is what created those opportunities and doors after the show.
Did you enjoy The Apprentice? Because I mean, from what we see as viewers, it can be a really uncomfortable show at times.
I loved it. I had so much fun. I would do it 10 times over. I think the aspect of waking up at 4, getting ready quickly, every single day was a new challenge, and they would throw random different curveballs out at you. You'd be going onto a stage ready to sell fitness equipment, and you get onto the stage and there's no equipment there. So you had to be really good at adapting. But for me, I found that really fun. So providing you're able to adapt to change, you would love the experience.
Do you think the experience of going through The Apprentice and living that kind of process, has that made you who you are now in terms of the fact that you can move from country to country, you can face the challenges? Do you think it was always there, or do you think it's come from that?
It definitely amplified it. It showed me that I did have the ability to adapt to everything, because it was forcing you to go through different challenges. But prior to that, I'd been a content creator for STA Traveled and won a trip around the world, and every 2 days you'd have to move to new countries. So I'd say it's definitely elevated the experience, but it's been a mixture of previous things before too.
Yeah. Okay. And in terms of what you get up to while you're traveling, you've got multiple businesses. So it's not like you're sat there lying on a beach all day catching some sun rays, which you probably do as well while you're working. But what is it that you're getting up to from a business perspective?
Great question. It's actually, it's really tricky, especially on social media, because on social media, if I'm not posting, it means I'm working. And when I post, it means it's, that one time I'm having fun, and I'm trying to create more of a balance. But honestly, I work really, really hard. And because I love doing it, and because I generally love working, in terms of being able to juggle it, I've been able to systemize the back end. So the team, in a sense, do the day to day. And then I'm creating new partnerships. I'm creating new joint ventures and thinking of new revenue streams, which is the fun bit. But it doesn't come overnight. And especially during lockdown, when I was trying to start up a shopping slot, another business, I was getting up at 6 and going to bed at 12 every single day for 6 or 7 weeks. And the reality is, yes, I do have this incredible life, but it came at a huge cost. I'm just happy to give that cost, which is my time and energy.
But people don't often see that bit though, do they? They just see the nice parts and the elements that we choose perhaps to show. And I think sometimes we forget, actually, people that are obviously managing multiple businesses, that entrepreneurial life that you lead, it's difficult, and it has its ups and downs. And I imagine you have those moments where everything just comes flooding at you and you're thinking, oh my God, what do I do now? How do I do that? Finding the balance to be able to, I suppose, delegate, give a little bit of control to the team or other people is something, again, you have to learn, isn't it?
Yeah, it's tricky. When I was running the tennis company, I had 40 members of staff I was working with. It was intense. We were running 400 events, and I was 22 at the time, and I was trying to figure out everything as I went along. And I learned very quickly that I'm very good at certain things and I'm very bad at other things. And I was finding team members who are great at the things I wasn't good at. Yeah. And only because I learned when I had less stress, I was younger, on how to actually delegate it, it was able to happen. I think there's a lot of entrepreneurs, especially in the last 1 or 2 years, or solopreneurs, which is completely fine, but the lifestyle of living an entrepreneur, they've mainly seen through social media. Like, no one wants to see me sat at a desktop for 8, 10, 12 hours a day. They'd get bored. They'd be like, oh, this isn't really interesting.
You don't do that, surely.
Exactly. And they just see the fun, exciting aspect. So I think it's a really reality check when people do have to start creating their own living, on actually being able to figure out that it is a lot of hard work, but you've got to be able to put that in.
Yeah, exactly. And you can't be frightened to it. And I think there's an element of being brave and just going with it, because, as you say, you learn as you go, don't you? You're going to make mistakes. You're going to fall down. It's the ability to get back up and keep pushing forwards.
No, exactly. It's probably for my tennis career, every single point, I'd win or I'd lose. And no matter what happened on that point, I had to focus on the next one. Yeah. And it's exactly the same in business.
So in terms of living that kind of entrepreneurial lifestyle, do you think you've always been or had that entrepreneurial spirit? Were you like it when you were young in terms of what you got up to outside of school and things?
Yeah, when I was younger, so both my parents were teachers, so they taught me how to love learning compared to how to learn at school. And I always knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur, but I didn't really know what that meant. I just knew that it was something that I wanted to do, something that I knew was within me. And my mum was Indian, so growing up, you can imagine it was like, oh yeah, you need to get your A stars or your full marks. 95% wasn't good enough. And she was like, you need to get a real career, become a doctor, become a lawyer. You can't just be an entrepreneur. Like, an entrepreneur isn't a real thing. And I was like, yes, it is. I'm going to figure it out later. And I started at 14 my first business, and we were selling retro sweets. Funnily enough, Sarah, who'd won the year before me in The Apprentice, this was her winning business idea, exactly what I was doing at 14. Don't know what happened there. And we got them into supermarkets, we were going to malls, and it was a really fun experience. And I knew from that age that this is something that I want to invest myself in. And I didn't know what it was, but I love making money, I love making change. But actually, the process of doing it was what I found really exciting.
Yeah, it is exciting as well, isn't it? And I think looking at your background, you're a grade 8 student, weren't you? An intelligent person. I think it helps, obviously, having 2 teachers for parents. There's no escape, is there? You leave school, you're at home, you're being taught, and everything else. And I think the education system and the ability to go through that is very separate to having that entrepreneurial kind of side of things, because it's almost about conforming, isn't it? When you go through school, you go and get a good job, you go and have that lifestyle. Actually, the entrepreneurial element is a little bit different. It's a little bit foreign, isn't it? Do you agree?
Yeah. When I was going through school, I didn't really know what was different, but I did know that I loved to try different things. I think looking at the school system, they should really start implementing the 4 C's. So creativity, critical thinking, collaboration, and communication, because those skill sets you can use through wherever. Yeah. But then also the ability to fail at school. It's a bad thing to fail. Whereas the opposite of that, I think it's a great thing to fail, providing you fail fast and you learn from your mistakes. And there's a lot of principles that I think within the schooling system, if you learn that from a young age, that you could develop further. I think one of the reasons why I'm very entrepreneurial and have that mindset, and my brother's the same, is from my tennis career, because I learned as a player, it was all about me. It was all about me being in full control over what happened on the tennis court. And it's exactly the same when it comes to life.
Yeah, I agree with you completely. Okay, so let's talk 2 PR. Give me an overview of what 2 PR is about.
Of course. Back in lockdown, I lost everything pretty much overnight. I'd lost my boyfriend. We broke up a few weeks earlier. My tennis business stopped running. I didn't know what to do. And we created this shopping slot website where you put your name, you put your postcode into our website, and you found all the delivery slots within your area. 6 weeks later, massive press campaign. We had 500,000 users and 3 million page views. And it was pretty much unheard of in the press world. They went everywhere. It's completely viral. And a mixture of that and also having a PR agent myself, where I pay them money and I didn't know where that money was going to, in the sense that 1 month I'd get a blog, the next month would be an event, the next one would be a speaking engagement. It didn't make sense from a business perspective. And using the power of press, I was like, well, hey, why can't we reverse engineer this? Meaning, if I pay this amount, I'm going to get in this particular X amount of publications, or I can get, what is the outcome going to be? And that's how we were able to expand. And it's expanded so quickly that 90% now of our income is through referrals.
That's crazy, isn't it? I see your post where you're continually looking for staff and that support network around you to allow that to keep growing.
In the last year and a half since we started, we have around 30 members of staff that we work with. We have our in-house team, and then we have kind of outsourced or people who are doing it part-time, journalists, writers. It's, there's a whole infrastructure now driving us, which is incredible.
And talk to me in terms of obviously PR and branding, the ability to be found online. Lots of people get it, but I would say the majority don't. They don't really get the fact that if you're searchable online, if people can find that really well-written blog or piece of PR, the power that has for individuals that are perhaps trying to grow a brand.
When you're looking to work with somebody, whether that's a person, whether that's a business, if you're due diligent enough, you should be Googling them. That's what companies are going to do. That's what people are going to do. They want to find out, is this person real? can I know, like, and trust them? PR is the basics of what somebody says about you when you're not in the room. And you can put that into your Google search result. If you type your name into Google, your company name, one of four things are going to come up. The first is positive. Your positive social medias, everything's congruent. You're going to have positive reviews and positive press. Second is negative, which is something, of course, you want to risk mitigate away from. The third is your competitor, which means you're losing out on all those potential search results. And then the fourth is nothing at all, which means nobody knows who you are. Now, are you going to stay with your partner if you don't trust them? Well, of course you wouldn't. And it's exactly the same when it comes to business relationships. Are you going to work with somebody if you don't trust them? And PR is being able to control the narrative and showing people about what you are and creating that transparency so people can trust you. And therefore, PR is the best converter it can, because it shows the world who you are and what you're about.
100%, doesn't it? And I think the more, certainly what the pandemic has shown for me, and I recruit day to day, so the ability to find people online, to find who works where and what they do, has a natural implication for me, because it means I can find the right people for the roles I'm looking for. But also, if you can find information, if you can find that good publicity, it actually gives you confidence that you're talking to the right people and the best people in the market. But again, I spend half my time telling recruiters to build that personal brand, put things out there that promote what they do, write a blog, create a podcast, do certain things that elevate you. Why do you think people don't, or they don't perhaps necessarily understand it?
Because it's new. People don't like change. People don't want to think that they now have to do this, create an online presence. They just don't think about it because it's new to them and they don't want to try something new. Or on the flip side, they don't know how to do it. So I think it's more of an educational piece. And also the piece of thinking a little bit differently. Like, if I was a recruiter and I wanted to grow my personal brand, or let's say I was trying to recruit, if your company had 2-3 articles per month talking about what an incredible company culture is, can you imagine the new talent pool that they're now going to be pulling in because everyone wants to work with this company? Yeah. It's exactly as the same recruiter. I'm going to find you the dream job. If you type into Google, how do I find a job that's right for you? And within the article, it's, for example, in Forbes, where it's a well-respected publication, and you, Steve, are the guest speaker talking about it, they're going to want to work with you because they've searched into Google, which is known as Search First Press Campaign, what exactly they're trying to do. And it's about being clever with press. But in terms of their personal brand, maybe that's new to them, maybe they don't want to do it, and maybe there's a lack of education there too.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think sometimes, certainly in my sector where it's predominantly sales, it's about that fee from the placement and the financial reward. I think because there's no instant gratification from a press release or for something that goes out immediate necessarily, that people don't really see the need to do it now.
I think there's a huge misconception when it comes to PR. That is that PR is about lead generating. Now, it can be a lead generator, but that's not the purpose of lead generation. You're building trust. That's ultimately what PR is doing, and it's putting your story out there. So it's going to shorten your sales cycles. It's going to make people want to hear about you more. And that's just one small aspect of it. So no, you're probably not going to get a straight ROI from a press release. But also on the flip side of that, if there's not a press release about you and someone's trying to do some due diligence and digging on you, they could make things up. So it's really about being able to balance it there.
Yeah, that's so true, isn't it? Okay, so in terms of, I suppose it's still along the same lines, and I'm going to express a little bit of naivety here. I've noticed you talking about NFTs, and it seems to be hitting the market a little bit more. Some of the people that I follow, some influential people, are talking about NFTs. I have no idea really what they're talking about. Give me a bit of an overview of what NFTs are.
Of course. Now, a great way to dive into the NFT world is, there's so many different examples. Technology behind it and the smart contracts is what's quite exciting. But one small glimpse of it, and what I'd like to say, is just imagine collectible cards. And one example that you could do is say that JD Sport, big brand, they've now released a load of collectible cards. And if you're a massive JD Sport, or let's say a football team, Arsenal, if you're a massive Arsenal fan, okay, Well, who's your football team, Steve?
Pick Aston Villa, don't pick Arsenal.
Okay, right, we'll go Aston Villa. So you're a massive Aston Villa fan. If Aston Villa then created their own card collection, you would probably want one of their cards if their card unlocks something really exciting. Meaning, if you own one of their cards, you get VIP access to one of their boxes every 3 months. That's something that you're excited to be about. So NFTs from a PR perspective gets really interesting when the brand utilizes their existing community to create a set of collectible cards, you could say, or NFTs, which would be with an interesting design of the card, which then unlocks something worth of value, which then you could, for example, buy, and everything's most things are bought in ETH. So let's say you bought it for 1 ETH to $3,000 right now. You would then have access to that particular card. Now, let's say that in 2 years' time, you don't like Aston Villa anymore. You can then trade in the sense someone would pay you for that particular use of that NFT. It's very similar to that. So when you're able to use brands, utilize the community, create something that the community would really, really like to do, and then put it into a collectible kind of form, that's a great way of being able to use a brand for an NFT. And that's when it gets interesting in the PR world, because if a brand gets in early and they're an early adopter for NFTs and bringing it in, they're not only building their community, but they're also taking part of the NFT community too, because everyone wants to try and get into it because it's such a buzzword right now.
I love the way you've explained that. I've actually got more sense out of that than everything else I've seen. So thank you for that.
And that's one element. There are multiple different elements, all to do with smart contracts and technology behind, but it's a great example to start understanding how brands can use it.
And do you see this just getting bigger? Do you think it's a bit of a fad where parts of it will take off, parts of it won't? There'll be good ideas and bad, like anything else. Do you think it's just where we are at this moment in time, or do you think there's lots of potential with it?
NFTs are here to stay, but only 1% to 2% of them, providing that there is something of value attached to the NFT, then it's going to stay. If it's just a picture and people are looking to flip it, there's nothing behind it. It's just a fad, it's just hype.
A trade, isn't it?
Exactly. But if there's something that people really value, that's when they're going to be able to stay.
Okay, so we'll move on to another area. In terms of you, Sabrina, and the life you've kind of had, have you had anything that's perhaps changed your direction? So big failure, something, I mean, you mentioned pre-pandemic, everything fell apart. Was there something in there that you didn't do or should have done that really has made you kind of think, oh, that's taught me a big lesson, this is what I'm going to do?
For me, it was actually the frustration of not starting earlier, because when I first started my tennis tournament business, the reason why I started that tournament business was when I was 15 years old, I was working and I was earning about £5 an hour, as you do at 15 years old. And I was running these tennis tournaments, and I earned my boss at that time £8,000 within 5 days running a tennis tournament. And I was like, wow, this is so incredible. I got paid £150 6 months late. I was not happy at all. And internally, I was just like, what's going on? There's only so many WhatsApp messages you can send to get paid. And I was also thinking, this is extremely unfair. I put in so much work and I wasn't getting any of that reward. So when I was 16, I learned how to get qualified as an organizer. And I went traveling at the age of 21, and I was running a few tennis tournaments on the side of my coaching business, tennis coaching. And when I came back from traveling, one of the mums that I was speaking to regularly at these tournaments, she'd started doing exactly what I was doing 5 miles down the road. And so many people have previously told me, oh, what you're doing is amazing, go do it at this tennis club as well. And I just didn't. And that fuel, that frustration, within 6 months, I was running events at 10 different companies and had the largest tennis tournament company in the UK. Wow. Because of that frustration. Yeah. So for me, I'm fueled at the thought of not being number one within what I'm doing.
Yeah, that's the drive, isn't it? And I think I'd talk about my story in terms of recruitment. I was told I'd never make it as a recruiter. I'd never be any good. I didn't fit the profile. And I think it just takes that one comment or that one thing to happen where you think, do you know what, screw this. I'm going for number one.
And it's throughout it. It's like, I want to be the biggest PR company because I can, because I've figured out what to do and how to scale it. I just love what I do. But on the flip side, if I'm doing something and I don't enjoy it, then I don't continue doing it. And I'm just like, okay, next. So I think it's about getting a balance there as well.
Yeah, and learning when something's not perhaps working or going in the direction you want it to. Okay. Who have you perhaps had around you in terms of the inspiration? Who do you like to spend time with? Are there people that you surround yourself with, whether that's podcasts or YouTube or whatever it might be? If you're reading, who would you say are the people that perhaps stand out that have motivated you?
Interesting question. When I was growing up, the real answer was, well, if I say Hermione Granger from Harry Potter, I don't know if that quite counts. The real question was nobody. Nobody inspired me. Nobody motivated me. And when I was 14 years old, I'd listen to Tony Robbins and Brendan Burchard every night. And I was like, why am I listening at that age to these 40-year-old men? Why are there no female doing things that I, find really exciting? But I didn't have a role model, and still I'm trying to now figure that out. And I'm starting to have a few personal ones. But right now, in terms of who I look up to, I'm very, very proactive in terms of who I'm friends with. Because I believe you've heard of the five friends will be your circle of influence. Everyone has heard of that. But if you take that to one more level, those 5 friends that you have, their closest 5 friends or people that they hang around with are influencing those people. So actually, you are looking at your sphere of squares from 5 squared. And then you can take that to another level and you get 5 cubed. And you realize, oh my goodness, if the friend isn't a high successor, that massively decreases the rate of me becoming successful.
Yeah.
So I actually also look at who my friends of friends are now.
Okay, my word.
I try to go friend to friend too much, but by looking at it, being very transparent and thinking, okay, I have my acquaintances, I have my business relations, I have people that I see as, friendly towards, but they're not my real core friends. And I've only got 2 or 3 of those. But that was very deliberate because I'm so picky about who I energize myself around with. Yeah. In terms of what I do in my spare time, podcasts, YouTube pretty much is most of the time there.
Yeah, I love that. I've never really thought in that. Well, obviously you hear the kind of circle of 5 friends, and you try and keep it. Well, I have anyway, tried to keep it to the positives and everything else, but never thought beyond that, the effect that potentially their friends may have. Okay, so what's next for you? What's the plan for 2022? Are there new things on the horizon?
It's tricky. I love doing so many things. For me, the biggest focus is scaling out to become a PR. Mm-hmm. It's been incredible the amount of companies who are now coming to us. We barely do any outreach. But on the flip side of that, also incorporating NFTs into brands and allowing brands to utilize this time and space for them to have an impact in the market. So that's what I'm working on right now.
So many things. How do you organize your time? How do you make sure that you're getting the elements of what you've got to get done, and you end up being successful in all the areas that you cover?
I'm very picky about who I speak to and when I speak to them, and I'm very, very scheduled out.
So I feel privileged now. Thank you.
I have the spontaneous me who moves country to country, but in terms of my day to day, before 9 o'clock, I don't check my messages. I don't contact people. That is my me time. I then have my morning meeting with the team. And during that time, any ideas I've had the night before, I delegate out. The team take place during the day. I remember listening on Clubhouse. How do you get to somebody, I can't remember who it was, but they were speaking to Elon Musk's best friend about how he gets so many things done. And every single day he spends that day on a particular company. But within that day, they also have a project. So what we do in our team is the team has a project for that day. And by the end of the day, that project is complete. And it allows us to move very quickly. So in my head, the team and the projects are getting moving, but I can spend my day just problem solving. So I think it's a mixture of having a very strong team, being strategic with how that team works, and then on a personal level, being very, very guarded with your time and not being scared to say no to certain things.
And again, that's the tough bit, isn't it? I talk to a lot of recruiters about putting an actual value on the time that you spend, knowing that you're spending it on the outputs you want to spend it on, and not perhaps working to someone else's agenda where you think you've had a busy day, but actually you've had a busy day helping someone else and not going in the direction you need to go in.
No, exactly. And it's really interesting when you say that, because we have an email system and we have all these inbound emails, but all we're doing for inbound emails is answering everyone else's problems. So just put that in like 30 minutes during the afternoon when you've got a bit more time, and you have a power hour or a couple of hours in the morning, just focusing on what exactly you need to get done for the day in order to move forward. Before you started answering everyone else's agendas, that you started moving forward on your own agendas. And that's been a really big game changer.
Yeah, so true. And in terms of like your motivations, obviously with so many things going on, you would struggle not to be motivated because you'll have so much and so many things to accomplish. But what happens on the days where you get up and you just think, oh, I need a day off, or I was going to say need some sun, but you follow it round anyway. So what do you do to kind of give yourself that bit of a kick up the backside on the days where you're not the motivated one?
Yeah, good question. I really don't believe in motivation. I think motivation is a fad word for people who don't want something enough. And that's taken by Tim Grover's book, Winning, in the sense that if I need to motivate myself to do a good job, then I'm in the wrong job. I shouldn't have to force and get myself motivated to do something. So I'd actually say it's taking a step back and saying, do I actually love what I do? In which case I shouldn't have to motivate each other. It's exactly like going to the gym. Like maybe to start with, you have to motivate yourself to get to the gym, but ultimately you want to go to the gym because you want to have that bigger objective. And it's exactly the same when it comes to work. Now, if I am having an off day, I actually, unless I have pre-scheduled things in, I'll take the day off. I only work when I feel energized and excited to work. And if I'm not, then that means something's wrong with my energy level on which I focus on myself so that I can be productive. There's no point of your team or even yourself turning up to a laptop to work if they're not going to do a good job.
It's so true. I'm getting better at that. I took up golf last year just to ensure I get the steps in, and I allow myself perhaps a 3 or 4 hour gap from the office. But actually it's really helped. It didn't at the start because I used to spend 3 or 4 hours thinking about what I should be doing while I was in the office whilst I was playing golf. And it meant you got a little bit more stressed by the time you turned up. But I've got better at it now. So I allow myself to have the break. But okay, in terms of the listeners, if people want to get in touch with you and speak to you about getting you involved with their PR and what they've got coming up, where's the best places to find you?
Of course, I'd say Instagram and LinkedIn are the ones that I'm most active on. And just do something exciting to get my attention, I'll always reply.
Okay. And for all the listeners that have tuned into this episode, if there's one piece of advice that you'd perhaps leave them with, what would that look like, or what would that sound like?
Going back to a quote earlier that we said, it'd be the only constant is change, because change is always going to happen, and it's the ability of you being able to adapt to that change which is going to create the outcome, and the outcome's either going to be very positive or it's going to be not so good. And with that ability, you either have two things. You already have the skill sets and knowing what to do and how to adapt it, so therefore you're going to be creating and becoming very internal with what happens, or it's completely out of your control, in which case you have the opportunity yourself to be able to learn how to be able to adapt to that new situation. And if you can master those two things, no matter what you're doing, whether it's finding a new job, trying to build your business, or trying to scale your business, you'll be able to change very quickly and you'll become successful.
What a way to end the episode. Sabrina, that was brilliant. Thank you.